Hello, family. This is Brother Soldier coming to you with another topic on Black African struggle and systemic reprisals, punishments, systemic reprisals and punishments, things that happen within the system and in many times institutions that come back on you when you try to do what you feel is right for your people, standing up. History has shown us that if you see something wrong, you say something about it, especially in an oppressive environment, chances are you're going to be retaliated on. This topic is about not only the reprisals that come from the system, but why some people give up and why some people tend to believe that there's nothing they can do about it in a situation that's too powerful for them, and why they become placaters and why. So we can't give an excuse to sellouts because so many people who have not sold out and that have gone forth, even to their death, because they knew what was right. So we can't give an excuse for that, but we want to talk about some of the things that have happened and kind of revisit some of those things. And I'm going to try to highlight these things. And I may put this in 2 to 3 parts, but let's see what happens here. I'm gonna just kind of flow. I have some things documented here and written. So in the struggle from just before slavery and during slavery and immediately following slavery up until the present day, you have seen Black Africans who were held captive against their will fight all the way from the shores, on the ships, on the plantations, even trying to escape, trying to find some redress of grievance. They have all had some form of fighting and resisting one way or the other. It took a lot of courage to do that under those situations. A lot of times instant death was the result. And if it was not instant death, you might wish you were dead. So there's some very serious documented past histories that we can visit. A lot of this stuff has been studied. A lot of this has been investigated, and the information's out here. It's just what we're going to do so that we do not revisit those times, or that we can have a better life ahead of us. So there's during the plantations, there were some slave revolts that happened. And Joseph Scott, in his book called Black Revolts, Racial Stratification in the USA, very good book. And he wrote and documented all the slave uprisings and rebellions and how the system reinvented itself to see to it that these attacks from the slave and the oppressed would be meaningless when they structure their and reinforce their system to handle those attacks. So what the system did was more times just restructure their laws in order to keep the slaves and the oppressed down. So revolt after revolt after revolt, you would see the system come back and make it look as though what they're doing is right and what you're doing is wrong, even to the point of criminalizing you. So many people lost their freedom like that. So in a system like that, as Joseph Scott had recorded these in his book, this book was written in around 1976. And in these recordings, he talks about the different strategies that the slaves had used, the oppressed had used And sometimes it was just running. Sometimes it was protesting. Sometimes it was attack, attack the plantation, burn it down. So these were different things that were tried out of desperation. And what you see is that the laws of the land were made in such that it was against the law. It was illegal for you to fight back like that or you'd be punished. So the things that were done wrong and that were wrong within the system was what was legal. And the things that were done correct, which is somebody trying to get out from under that, was made illegal. So you have a flip of the law where the law should be really serving everybody. It wasn't. And they looked at you as 3/5 of a human. So you were just good as a dog or less. So in that sense, the laws are working against you. And it says in the scriptures, the law is made for the lawless. And if the law is made, it should be used lawfully. So in that sense, the law is supposed to be lawfully. I have that scripture. I believe it's in 1 Timothy, the first chapter. I believe that's where it is, but I'm not looking at it right here. So anyway, when we get out of slavery, after all those slave revolts and everything, Nat Turner, Denmark Vesey, Harriet Tubman, all of those people who broke the laws of trying to free their people, these were Christians, if I must say. One was a preacher. We get out of slavery, then there's Jim Crow coming, and then there's other things, Klan intimidation, saying that even though the laws freed you, you can't do this, you can't go here, you can't do this, you can't. So there are always reinforcements to keep you subservient. Now, if we move a little bit further than that, we get into the 1920s. They have what is called Little Wall Street, or what you call the Black Thriving Community in Tulsa, Oklahoma, that was bombed eventually out of some argument over some white female that felt like somebody intimidated or did her wrong. Some black male did her wrong in an elevator, and that led from one thing to another to the whole thing erupted in a big riot. And that riot was used by the wicked as an excuse to go and destroy the whole black town. And whatever those towns were doing, where they were thriving with banks, schools, institutions that were making very good money, where the black Africans had settled and were just doing great, thriving. There was economic jealousy, and there was the tendency for those people who were the dominant race to envy that, and they wanted to punish them for it. And by doing so, it was a riot that ended up where they bombed the place, and the black Africans ended up in these what do they call concentration camps? Or they call them detention camps. and they were put in there, and they were put with ID tags on their chest and criminalized because of their behavior. But none of this stuff was applied to the people who burned the place down. They were all basically let off the hook, or they were justified. So this was a setback. And there's a documentary, 2 documentaries, part 1 and part 2, of thriving black communities, and it says the dark truth. And it talks about a lot of these cities that were burned to nothing, and where the people were criminalized decade after decade after decade after decade, all the way up through to the 50s and 60s, all the way from the time people were free from slavery from 1865 all the way up. And these were terrorizing these black communities. Even when they tried to do these things on their own and tried to thrive, the power structure intervened and destroyed them. And it could have been over a Black Death, it could have been a rioting over something, but whatever it was, these blacks were still blamed and set back so many, 10 years where they keep having to rebuild their communities, rebuild after they get destroyed, rebuild. And this was white on black many times. That black on black thing started increasing after like around the 60s and started really picking up. But before then, it was mostly white on black. So, and moving forward from there, you had different groups coming into play called the Black Panther Party for self-defense. And there's a book out called Revolutionary Suicide by Huey Newton, which was one of the co-founders of the Black Panther Party. And he talks in his book about some of the struggles that he had in trying to reduce police brutality and the way they shot down black guys. They were trying to be a militant arm going in there, trying to protect the lives of these brothers who the government wasn't really doing a good job at even trying to protect them. And they were supporting the police. And a lot of these things were just keeping blacks in their place because they didn't want you to thrive like they do. So even though there's some things that have worked better for us, these are the things that continue to go on. And one of the interesting things that I read, this is years back, but I have my notes here, is when Huey Newton made a statement that he said that the Ku Klux Klan and the Minutemen were dangerous in their own way, but he said, but they weren't the real danger. They said the real danger came from highly organized, established forces. The local police, the National Guard, and the United States military. He said they were the ones who devastated Watts and killed innocent people. In comparison to them, the paramilitary groups are insignificant. In fact, he said these groups are hardly organized at all. It is the uniformed men who are dangerous and who will come into your communities every day to commit violence against us, knowing that the laws will protect them. And there was a Mulford bill that they made against the free, lawful mandate that you can carry open weapons in the open, like a shotgun. Well, when the Panthers did it, they changed the laws. They just simply go back and change the laws, then they make it criminal. Then they come back and arrest you when you're exercising those laws. And so these are the things that the system, what I call system reprisals, they come back and change. There's no equal playing field, fair be fair, wrong be wrong. It's like you get it into your mind that you're going to exercise these rights, we'll just change the law and criminalize it. Okay, so these are the things that you have to thrive against. Building your communities, getting it burned down over some technicality. Going against the wrong in the system and the system turning you into the criminal. And so in page 147 of the book, Revolutionary Suicide by Huey Newton, you will see him explain what I just read to you. So you're dealing with economic jealousy in the places where they burn the towns down. They call it the racial tensions is a part of it, and systemic racism. These are the things that cause the communities to be attacked. And and when the protesters and the people are rebelling and revolting against this, they want to criminalize that, but peace was already broken when they came into the community and terrorized those guys, and then those guys reacted. They only want to look at the reaction, but they don't want to look at who initiated it and why they did what they did. So these are the injustices that I see in the system that I've concluded that In this next part, I'm coming with part 3, and I want to talk to the Black community. But my time is out on this, but this is part of what you're dealing with systemic reprisals on Black Africans when they try to do what's right. So until then, my next part 3, Hotep.